2 years. It had been 2 whole years since the Millis continent debacle, and Rudeus had convinced himself that the universe might be done humiliating him for a while. He was wrong about this, as he was about many things, but he'd find that out soon enough. Currently, the trio of Rudeus, Eris, and Ruijerd was sitting in Eastport, harbour city, strong smell of fish and smugglers, both of which were local specialties, pressing their faces close to a map that Rudeus had just bought, and that contained, per local law, only the barest minimum of useful information. Eastport smelled like every port city Rudeus had not actually been to, but had vividly imagined while reading sea adventure novels in his previous life. Salt, rot, something identifiably marine, but in the wrong direction, from fresh, and underneath all of it a secondary note that he could only describe as transactions that various parties would prefer not to have documented. The harbour water, visible between the planks of the dock, was the particular shade of green that develops when a body of water has absorbed the ambitions of too many optimistic sailors for too many decades. Rudeus looked at it, then at their 3 travel options, then at his own life in aggregate, and found the comparison uncomfortably accurate. Not particularly clean, slightly dangerous, moving forward by the grace of things he didn't fully understand. On the other hand, still moving. 3 routes to the Asura Kingdom, a safe eastern highway, 10 months, boring, alive at the end, a western forest path, shorter in theory, no carriages on foot, Eris and Rudeus cannot ride horses, bad idea, or a sea voyage to the Beggarit continent, enormous scorpions the size of great tortoises, enormous worms that preyed on the scorpions, a desert that turned into a tundra, almost no oases, no food. Rudeus crossed option 3 off the list before he finished explaining it. As usual, you're a coward, Eris said. I'm just faint of heart, Rudeus agreed. I think I could do it just fine, Eris added, eyes lighting up at the prospect of a continent full of things that could kill her. You'd be fighting scorpions the size of carriages for 3 months, Rudeus said, through a desert that becomes a tundra, with almost no water. That sounds amazing. Ruijerd, help me out here. Ruijerd considered this with genuine seriousness. I have crossed the Beggarit continent once. The scorpions were not the largest concern. The worms that prey on the scorpions are significantly larger. Eris's expression achieved a quality that Rudeus had never seen on a human face before. The expression of someone calculating how large, significantly larger than a carriage-sized scorpion, actually was, and arriving at a number that satisfied rather than deterred her. How large is significantly larger? Eris, Rudeus said, I'm just asking. I know what you're doing. I'm making an informed decision about a travel route. You're trying to find a reason to go to the continent with the worms. A pause. The eastern route has bandits, Eris said. I could fight bandits. The eastern route has bandits at a frequency of roughly once every 3 weeks, and we have Ruijerd, so the bandits take one look at us and reconsider their career. The Beggarit route has worms the size of... Eris, I am not going to Beggarit. Are you sure you'd be okay with that, Eris? Rudeus asked, switching tactics. We'd be on a ship for a long time. We're not going to Beggarit. Eastern route it was. 10 months of safe, sensible travel. Rudeus made peace with his cowardice, which, honestly, had been keeping him alive for years. Then, as tends to happen whenever things are going tolerably, Rudeus ended up in the man-god's room. The room was pure white and featureless, except for the man-god himself, who appeared as an indistinct person-shaped mosaic. Less because of divine mystique and more, Rudeus suspected, because the man-god knew that would be more annoying. The last time they'd spoken was a year ago, which was a year longer than Rudeus would have preferred. Already resorting to foul language? Just as crass as ever, said the man-god, who apparently monitored Rudeus's inner monologue. Their conversation followed its usual pattern, Rudeus being hostile, the man-god being smug and evasive, both of them eventually negotiating down to something workable. This time, Rudeus had a specific request. Where was his family? Zenith, Lilia, Aisha. Sylphie too, if possible. The man-god admitted he might lie. Rudeus pointed out this was not a compelling endorsement. They compromised. If the man-god's advice led to a genuine family reunion, Rudeus would stop being quite so aggressive every time they talked. Not trusting him, just less aggressive. The man god agreed to provide more detail going forward, since vague directions were apparently fun for him in ways that Rudeus found infuriating. A vision appeared in Rudeus's demon eye. A back alley, somewhere. A lone girl, maybe 5 or 6, is grabbed roughly by a soldier. A second soldier tears up a paper she was holding. The girl screams. Her name is Aisha Greyrat, the man god said. She's detained in the Shirone Kingdom. You'll be there when this happens. Don't use your real name. Call yourself the Kennel Master of Dead End. Ask her about the situation, then send a letter to your acquaintance in the Shirone Royal Palace. Both Lilia and Aisha will be rescued. Wait, what acquaintance? Good luck, Rudeus. Consciousness, departing. Rudeus's dignity, already gone. He woke up running for the bathroom. The man god's dream appearances came with the same excruciating headache as overusing his eye of foresight, because apparently the man god had been using Rudeus's demon eye to show him the vision, which meant the entire reason he'd been given the demon eye was so the man god could use it as a puppet projector. Rudeus felt extremely used. Ruijerd found him slumped against the hallway wall and tried to help, looking genuinely worried in a way that made the guilt worse. Rudeus attributed the episode to his eye of foresight misbehaving, which was true in the most technical sense. He did not mention the man god. What he did do, in a way that he hoped sounded completely normal and unrelated to anything, was tell Ruijerd, if you ever find yourself in a difficult situation and someone whispers honeyed words in your ear, don't believe what they say. Deceitful people strategically target you when you're the most vulnerable. Ruijerd nodded earnestly, clearly having no idea what Rudeus was actually saying. Back in the room, Rudeus lay wide awake at 2 in the morning, head churning with man-god theories. Eris sprawled next to him, legs spread, shirt riding up to reveal her belly button, bra free and snoring cheerfully. Rudeus readjusted her blanket in a gesture of pure, sincere decency, and she muttered Rudeus is a perv in her sleep. He went back to bed. Some people would never be appreciated. The next morning, Rudeus announced they were heading to the Shirone Kingdom. Neither Eris nor Ruijerd asked why, which was either a testament to their trust in him or evidence that they'd stopped expecting his plans to make sense. They stopped in Wyvern, capital of the King Dragon realm, which looked and felt like an America built on a foundation of smithies and sword training halls. Their carriage broke down. Rudeus had to wait 7 days for repairs and occupied himself with market research, information gathering that yielded absolutely nothing, and the highlight of the entire detour, finding rice. Not just any rice, actual, honest-to-goodness rice, sitting in a marketplace looking yellow and slightly inferior. Rudeus bought it instantly. A few hours later, he was in the inn's garden with earth magic cooking utensils, a borrowed hourglass, a pub owner's recipe, and an expression of religious conviction. What are you doing? An experiment. Eris watched from a distance while pretending she wasn't watching. He cooked the rice using precise fire control and the hourglass method, lifted the lid, and inhaled the wave of steam. 45 out of 100, he announced, tasting a grain. Not koshihikari, not sasanishiki, not even C-ranked by Japanese rice standards, dry, slightly bitter, still a bit yellow, but rice. Rice that brought a wave of nostalgia so strong that Rudeus gave it 15 extra points out of sheer emotional weakness. He made a bowl for Eris with some salt. She chewed it slowly, mixed emotions visible on her face. Then Rudeus cracked a raw egg over his, added salt, mixed it with the chopsticks he'd made from earth magic, and took a bite. It needed soy sauce. Everything, always, forever would need soy sauce. But raw egg on rice, even this rice, even without soy sauce, was still raw egg on rice, and Rudeus ate the entire bowl while emitting small sounds of contentment. Eris, this is better than before. High praise. They finished everything, including the burnt crunchy bits on the bottom. They pressed on through Sunakia and Kika, 2 vassal states of the King Dragon realm, where rice cultivation was enthusiastically booming by royal command. The rice got better the farther north they went. Rudeus ate to the point of personal disgrace at nearly every inn, and began to look forward to mealtimes for the first time since being teleported to the demon continent. Kika had a dish called nanahoshiyaki, meat coated in rice and wheat flour, deep-fried in oil, which was, in principle, karaj. In practice, it was prepared at inconsistent temperatures with no soy sauce, ginger, or garlic, using whatever animal was cheapest, and the result was a crime against the concept. "It's good," Eris said. "Yeah, it's good," Ruijerd agreed. They both had seconds. Rudeus looked at his plate with the expression of a man who knows there is better out there and cannot be content. 4 months. Then, the Shirone Kingdom. The Shirone Kingdom was small, old, and geopolitically improbable. 200 years of survival right on the edge of the conflict zone, courtesy of an early alliance with the King Dragon realm that was in name only, in the way that a gun held to your head is technically only a suggestion. Rudeus was not very interested in this. What he was interested in was that Roxy was here, his adorable, clumsy, exceptionally short master, court magician to a prince, teaching soldiers magic deflection as a side project apparently, which explained why that knight yesterday had intercepted his stone cannon. A no-name soldier defending against Rudeus's attack. Roxy's training. Of course, he wanted to see her. He wanted to tell her about visiting her hometown. He wanted her to show him the king-tier magic she'd mentioned in her letters. He wanted strategy meeting first. Rudeus corralled the others. Per the man-god's advice, search for Aisha, use a fake name, send a letter to Roxy. The fake name issue prompted an unexpectedly enthusiastic naming session. Rudeus suggested Knight of the Shadow Moon, a Kamen Rider villain famous for writing haikus in a lunch lady outfit. Eris's eyes sparkled. She wanted to be the same name. They settled on a theme: Knight of the Shadow Moon, Rudeus; Sword of the Shadow Moon, Eris; Lance of the Shadow Moon, Ruijerd. Ruijerd accepted this without apparent embarrassment. The concept of nerd cringe had not reached this world. Rudeus also spent a morning composing his letter to Roxy. Seasonal greetings. Checking in. I'm in Shirone's capital and would love to meet. Everyone from Buena Village is missing. Our maid Lilia is missing. I'm very worried. The first letter of each line, read vertically, spelled help me. He sealed it with an imprint from Roxy's pendant and signed it. Your beloved pupil, Rudeus Greyrat, who just wants to watch over you. Because the handwriting alone wasn't enough, Roxy was perfectly capable of receiving an anonymous letter with help me embedded in the text and filing it somewhere without reading it. He sent the letter. Being tailed immediately afterward was probably not a coincidence. Rudeus noticed it at once. Small figure, ducking between shadows. A child, or possibly a halfling, or possibly something else entirely small. He decided to lose them by taking 2 rights and entering a narrow alleyway. The stalker slapped futilely against an earth wall he raised. A strange sensation rose in his throat. He felt a sudden, specific wrongness. The alley looked exactly like the one in the man-god's vision. Déjà vu. He turned and ran back. No, stoop! Give it back! He collapsed the wall with a targeted shockwave. Before him, a lone girl, hand seized by a soldier, another soldier tearing up her paper. The vision, live. That's for my father. Don't tear that up! The girl had Paul's brown hair and Lilia's face, pulled into a ponytail. She was wearing a baggy maid's outfit and was covered in tears and snot. Who the hell are you? I'm that girl's. I am the Knight of the Shadow Moon. What part of you is a knight? You're obviously a magician. An excellent point that Rudeus chose to ignore. The soldiers seemed to consider him a mischievous child playing hero. He launched a stone cannon at them. The first soldier intercepted it instantly with his sword, water god style, remarkable reaction speed. The second soldier started to call for backup. Rudeus created a pit under his feet mid-shout and kept stone cannons flying at the first soldier while telling Aisha to be ready to run. Then the whistles started. From everywhere. Twee, tweet. A blockade already assembled. Rudeus had 1 card left. Aisha! Hold on tight! Don't let go, no matter what. He conjured an earth lance with a flattened tip at his feet and used it as a catapult. They were briefly airborne. He broke both legs landing. Never again. He healed them immediately and filed that maneuver under do not repeat under any circumstances. Back at the inn, Aisha had cried quite a lot, understandably, and also peed herself. Understandably, given that scary men grabbed her, and then a small boy launched her into the sky. Rudeus washed her underwear and gave her one of his shirts to wear while her outfit dried. He reflected afterward that his inner beast had remained entirely calm throughout this experience. Not a ripple. He'd also never been interested in Zenith's breasts. Some family-based instinct appeared to have activated automatically. He approved of this. Isha, dried out and dressed, bowed deeply. "My name is Isha Greyrat. Thank you very much. Sir Knight." She was apparently keeping the shadow moon thing, which Rudeus now regretted even more. She asked for pen, paper, and directions to the Adventurers Guild. She had no money. When informed that pen and paper cost money, she explained that her mother had taught her that a young girl with a pleading look in her eyes asking, "I want to send a letter to my father," would not need money. Lilia. "You absolute scoundrel." Isha said she couldn't ask her brother for help. Rudeus, sitting across from her as her undisclosed brother, pressed for more details with completely neutral curiosity. The story that followed: her mother had a small box she treasured, told Isha never to touch it. Naturally, Isha opened it. Inside, a pair of girls' panties, size consistent with a 10-year-old. Process of elimination led her to her brother's former tutor. Isha's conclusion, delivered with the precise analytical confidence of a child who was disturbingly advanced, was that her older brother was a pervert. A pervert, a pervert, a pervert. There's no mistake, my brother's a pervert. Rudeus sat with this information. Oh, okay, so your brother is a pervert. That's really rough. Ha ha! He now completely understood why the man-god had said not to use his real name. He introduced himself as the kennel master of Dead End, explaining that he controlled 2 very ferocious dogs. Isha gazed at him with shining eyes. He felt slightly bad about this. He was going to impress her first with a dashing rescue of her mother, and then reveal who he was. That was the plan. "All right, I'm going to rescue your mother." "Huh? Please just leave it to me." They talked for hours after that, Isha filling him in on the past 2 years, teleported to the Shirone Royal Palace, both she and Lilia arrested on suspicion, detained indefinitely, no letters permitted. Rudeus answering her questions about the demon continent, both of them dancing carefully around the fact that they were siblings, without either of them fully realizing the dance was happening. Rudeus mentioned having been a tutor in Roa. Aisha noted excitedly that that was the same place as her brother. He agreed that the possibility of having crossed paths was minute. How was he going to maintain his dignity as an older brother when she discovered the truth? This was a genuine concern. Eris and Ruijerd returned at sunset looking disheveled. They'd gone to the slums for information, and something had happened, as it always did when those two went anywhere unsupervised. Rudeus didn't ask for details. He told them about Isha and Lilia, swore them to secrecy about his real identity, and when Eris immediately suggested attacking the castle, told her to wait for Roxy's reply. "It's been a while since I stormed a castle," Ruijerd said, hefting his spear with visible enthusiasm. "We wait," Rudeus repeated firmly. The next day, a knight arrived at noon. Ginger York, member of the 7th Prince's Imperial Guard. A woman, arriving alone, with the composed manner of someone who had very professionally not heard about any incident involving stone cannons and unlicensed catapulting. She was not conventionally attractive, but Rudeus, who had been thinking about this sort of thing more lately, suspected she'd find an excellent husband based on her powers of observation alone. "Lady Roxy bids you come see her." He left Aisha with Ruijerd and Eris. "Don't leave the room." Grabbed the ultra-unpopular Ruijerd figurine from the bottom of his bag as a conversation piece, and spent a few minutes making sure his hair was combed. Eris noted he was being very thorough about this. He said he hadn't seen his master in a long time. "You're going to formally introduce me to her, right?" Eris said. "Yes, once everything's settled." He meant it. The walk through the capital was brisk. The streets had deliberately winding layouts to impede enemy advances, a classic defensive design, similar to some towns in Japan's Mino region. Ginger was taciturn but responsive to questions. They passed a slave market on the main road, 3 humans and a beast folk, upper bodies oiled and exposed. An auction, apparently relocated from its usual location after adventurers got into a fight in the regular area, which Rudeus suspected correlated with Eris and Ruijerd's disheveled return last night. He looked at the Washawa woman on the platform and confirmed that his instincts were still fully operational. The relevant systems were fine. The Aisha incident had just been family. Reassuring. Ginger was frowning at the market. As a knight responsible for public order, she seemed to find open-street slave auctions professionally offensive. When the crowd thickened, Ginger picked Rudeus up by the armpits without warning. Better vantage point. Very matter-of-fact about it. Lady Roxy would also hop around trying to get a look whenever there was a crowd. Really? Yes, although she always looked conflicted when I lifted her up like this. Did she tell you to put her down? She got mad and told me to put her down immediately. Rudeus knew it. He asked, purely out of academic interest, where exactly Ginger had grabbed her. The same way as now. What was it like? She repeated. Roxy looked conflicted and said to put her down immediately. What he actually wanted to know, the texture, was information he apparently was not going to obtain today. Please put me down, he said. Let's hurry on. They made their way to the castle, which was comparable in size to the one Eris's family lived in. Not as grand as Kishirisu Castle or the White Palace, but respectable. Ginger bowed to the gate guard with practiced formality. He snapped to attention immediately. She ranked 12th among the knights. Rudeus filed this as probably significant. They went through a back entrance, only nobles used the front, wound through guard rooms where card-playing soldiers leapt to attention at the sight of Ginger, and followed her deeper into the palace. Rudeus had by this point been in enough castles and large institutional buildings to have developed a working theory. The length of the corridors was architecturally unrelated to the distance they needed to cover. You always walked further than the geometry of the building should have allowed. He suspected this was intentional. Palace designers, either by instinct or by instruction, built the approach to any room of importance to be just slightly longer than comfortable. Long enough that by the time you arrived, you had spent 5 minutes doing nothing but walking in someone else's building, your shoes making an embarrassing amount of noise on their floors, while guards watched you from every side door and sconces illuminated nothing useful. The effect was not subtle. You were a guest, meaning a visitor by permission, meaning someone who was here because they were allowed to be and would leave when that allowance expired. No amount of confidence survived 4 minutes of corridor unassisted. Rudeus had practiced walking like someone who belonged in places and still felt the architecture winning. Eventually, they reached a door in a quiet, out-of-the-way corridor. This was Roxy's room, Rudeus assumed. The location seemed entirely appropriate for her. Ginger took his staff and belongings and knocked. "It's Ginger. I brought Lord Rudeus with me." "Enter." That was a man's voice. Rudeus had approximately half a second to process that anomaly before Ginger opened the door and motioned him in. The room contained 1. A boy seated in a chair, looking self-important. Short arms and legs, large adult-sized head, otaku facial structure, the overall silhouette of someone who had been half-heartedly compressed at birth. The two of them were probably, unfortunately, brethren on some level. 2. Two maids flanking him. One was unfamiliar. The other was Lilia, 5 years older and looking it, tied to a chair with ropes and a gag. 3. No Roxy anywhere. "Oh ho, so this is Rudeus, huh?" The floor dropped out beneath him, literally. At the boy's command, the floor beneath Rudeus simply ceased to exist. He dropped,